Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for being with the Danielcode today. One of you might just post in the question column that you can hear me all right, if you would be so kind. Here we are. Good. Oh, Bodie, good. She can hear me. That's the main thing. Norbert up in north, the very cold country in Canada, and David Beecham from across the ditch. Welcome, everyone. So it's good afternoon to those of you on the west coast of the US and Canada. It's hello and good morning to our friends on the east coast of Australia, and it's good afternoon to those of you like David across the ditch in New Zealand, wonderful country of New Zealand, the land of the long white cloud. Well, what a day. If you're not feeling particularly good and chuffed and excited about yourself and your trading today, you've got a problem, and you should solve that problem by letting me know, because it's been a wonderful, wonderful day. It's been a wonderful months of trading. It's just getting better and better, and I love it. And it's just so good to have you all with me today. Akshay's with us from India. Good to have you with us, my friend. Albert, he's a tutorial guy. So is David from across the ditch. George is with us. Greg's with us. Greg is Greg's a money manager and a Danielcode member, and he's done a tutorial. And he lives in Colorado Springs, beautiful Colorado Springs, which unfortunately he's leaving to go and live in Texas. So great to have you with us, Greg. We've got Greg Palladini with us today. He's a very, very important person to us, as I'll tell you in a moment. Jeff Sherburne's with us. Good to have you with us. Joe, he's a tutorial guy. John from Coffs Harbour, great to have you, my friend. He's a tutorial guy. It's drying up, John. We're not getting flooded every bloody second week. It's wonderful, isn't it? Jonathan's with us. He's David's colleague and partner. He's also his brother-in-law in New Zealand. Wonderful tutorial guy. Justin, of course. Justin, I owe you a reply to your email, mate. Any day next week we can get together and talk about your trading and answer all of your questions. Lloyd's with us. Katerina Needham's with us. That's my daughter Bodie. I'm delighted to have her with us. She's actually home with us at the moment. She's on a short mid-year break from medical school, and that's in Sydney. So we don't see much of her, and we're delighted to have her here. And I'll tell you a bit more about her in a moment. Lloyd's with us, grand. Mark, of course, we can't start without Mark. He's an absolute perennial Danielcode guy. So good to have you with us. Mickey D's with us. Mickey D, the full moon, eh? One up and one down. Great stuff. Peter Mack, who's not a day trader, is with us. Rob from New Zealand's a special guy. He's a friend of mine. He's a very, very knowledgeable trader, and he's really switched on in what's happening in New Zealand. Vicky's with us. We don't have many ladies and as members, and I'm very delighted to have you with us, Vicky, and it's always important to especially thank you. We don't have many ladies, and we would like more. So it's grand to have you with us. Todd's with us. Oh, yes, everyone's coming in now. Murph has just arrived. Of course, there's no party without Murph. Good to have you with us, my friend. Hope everything's good with you and many others. A few of you coming in a few minutes late. That's okay. Nothing's happened yet, folks, but it is about to happen. So today's webinar is called What Lies Behind is What Lies Ahead, because human nature being what it is, you always want to know what's going to happen next. Where's this market going to bottom? What's going to happen then? Well, you have to remember this. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow, not even me. Or perhaps I should say particularly not me, because I follow the charts. And if it's not on the chart, it hasn't happened. So you simply have to accept that fact. I mean, there's a whole industry in forecasting what might happen tomorrow, but they never get around to telling you that all of these ideas, and some of them, like our fourth seal commentary from Frank DB, is very sophisticated, but it's all based on probabilities. We don't know the future. We only see the river of life from this moment on backwards. We know what's happened in our life. We don't know what's going to happen in the next day, year, any period you like. It hasn't happened yet, and we don't know. We can make very, very good estimates of that. In fact, our daily trading signals show you that we're always on the ball, as you're going to see. And if you think we're not, you're missing something. So pay attention, folks. Very important. You should have had a cracking great day today and a wonderful, wonderful week's trading. If you haven't, you need to get in touch with me and learn how to trade. One of the gentlemen I want to single out for you today is Greg Palladini. And Greg's important to us for a number of reasons. First of all, because he's a wonderful human being. But Greg came to us as a Danielcode member, I believe, back in 2015. And in 2016, he came to a live tutorial that I was doing at Los Angeles. Wonderful fun we have in these tutorials. They really are quite you should come if you just want a party for a start and be entertained. They are great events. But then Greg came back again last year and did another tutorial specifically to learn about trading time, which I wasn't teaching back in 2016. And that is just blow your mind stuff. But the importance of Greg is that he's a very, very competent trader. And he's a very, very esteemed wealth manager. He manages money for other people. But more important than any of that, he's just done his time tutorial, trading Danielcode time signals. And you can read all about that on our forum if you're a member or a guest. And it's under the link Danielcode trading program or something similar to that. And it's largely written by Greg. But he's been kind enough to allow us to use his full name, which understandably most people don't want me to do that. So I refer to him like Murph and Mark L. and John and some of those guys just by their name, sometimes a second initial. But Greg was kind enough to not only let us use his name, but to share with all of us his experiences and what he learned while he was doing his Danielcode time trading tutorial. Now, when Greg came to me, he was an established Forex trader. And I tell people, I can't get many to believe me, but I tell them when they ask, trading Forex and futures on the Danielcode is exactly the same. Greg was an established Forex trader, and he's now a futures trader because when he saw the probabilities and possibilities of trading futures with the Danielcode, he jumped right in. And he's been kind enough to share all of that information with us on his thread at the website. So do read that. Greg, again, thank you for your generosity of sharing your experience with our members to have the knowledge, particularly from someone like you who was a very well-established trader, had already done his Danielcode tutorial, then to graduate to doing your Danielcode time tutorial, and what you've seen and learned from that is wonderful stuff. Okay, so the bulk of our business, folks, is Danielcode time signals, and the creation of those is part of the gift, but the mechanics of how to trade them is the second part. So those of you who attend these Danielcode tutorials should by now know how to trade all these markets. I constantly try to teach you something when we're doing a webinar. Our fortnightly webinars, Greg, for the benefit of your son. That's Greg in Texas, I think. His son's intrigued with the word fortnightly, which I use a lot. It's a very common English expression, but apparently not in the States. So I call them bi-monthly webinars. A fortnight, incidentally, is 14 nights. It's an abbreviation. A fortnight means 2 weeks. The gift of coffee. It's the morning here, and I've been up since 4 o'clock. preparing this webinar for you folks. So coffee is a vital ingredient. So you know that markets are rational, orderly, and sometimes predictable. Days like today, you're starting to scratch your head and say, no, they're not. But they are. If you don't understand that markets are orderly and sometimes predictable, you're not following the Danielcode. Danielcode will keep you on the right side of your trade almost all the time, and that's a very, very small almost. It doesn't happen very often, if at all. So let's keep going here. So we've got a whole lot of things to discuss with you today, and this discussion is really, I've called it the discussions for today. It's really discussions about your future. And if you get this right, if you get the Danielcode right, your future is assured, despite the gloom and misery that we're seeing now around the world, and much, much worse is coming. So today I'm going to talk about a number of items. The first is Frank DB and the fourth seal. He wrote an article, the most recent one. Well, they're all on the website under articles. One of them, his outlook for what was going to happen after the top in 2021, which came a month late, in fact, a few months late, was called Massacre of the Bulls. And it was very, very dramatic. It envisaged stock market collapse, bank collapses, food shortages, energy shortages, and war. If you think about it, that's pretty well happened already. Stock markets are collapsing, and they're only just starting. Banks, if you're involved in the crypto world at all, many of those banks, the crypto trading platforms where the money's kept, have collapsed. We're seeing more of that. We're only seeing the tip of the iceberg so far, folks. Food shortages, well, all over the world. Absolutely ridiculous. A head of lettuce in Australia this week, $12 for a head of lettuce. I mean, the price of vegetables and what have you, unbelievable. What's happened? Well, we had the wettest year on record, and a whole lot of these fields, a bit like the very bottom of my block of land here, you couldn't get a machine on them. You couldn't. I couldn't mow the lawn. It's been 6 months since we've mowed the lawn properly, and it's starting to dry out now. Praise the Lord. But it's been miserable, and you're finding this same issue in different versions of it. You know, it's the same thing but a different version. This country's been, the East Coast, been flooded for 7, 8, 9, 10 months now. Either really, really seriously, not so far from where John L. lives down there in beautiful Coffs Harbour. Between Coffs Harbour and here, Lismore, it's just been a total wreck, wiped out twice, maybe 3 times over that period. Crypto platforms collapsing everywhere. No baby formula in the States. Energy shortages. We got a warning here 2 days ago that the east coast of Australia is facing blackouts. Why? For the same reason that the same problems are happening all over Europe now. And we're going to talk about that. And of course, war seemed unthinkable when Frank wrote that article. It's not unthinkable now. It's happening. I was going to say in the heart of the Eurozone, but at least on the periphery of the Eurozone. Very important country, Ukraine. It's a big country with 45 million people. And it produces 12% of the world's wheat. It feeds millions. Problems, what are the other things? Problems in US policy, interest rates starting to rise, gas at $5, problems in Switzerland with their currency. Big news in the Swissy today. I hope you got it. It was a huge move. If you didn't get it, let me know, because you don't understand the Danielcode. Ukraine, and you think there's problems with energy. Wait to see what's going to happen in Europe in winter. This winter, I know we're just going into summer there now, but winter is coming. Winter is always coming. And if they think they're going to manage without Russian gas or Russian oil, it's going to be an issue. Problems in this country and across the ditch in New Zealand. Problems in the Pacific because of China's ever-reaching tentacles. Lots and lots of problems around, many of them, everywhere. So what's your response to all of these miseries? Rejoice. The Daniel Code has and will continue to save you. Rejoice is not original. It's what Maggie Thatcher said after the Falklands War with Argentina. Rejoice, she said, just rejoice. And so I've told you some of the miseries. You're aware of other miseries, particularly closer to your own individual countries where you live all around the world virtually. But there's a lot of trouble happening, and it's just started. But your response should simply be to rejoice, because yes, petrol's getting more expensive, ridiculous. My daughter Bodhi, as I told you, came home to spend a few days with us at her midterm from Sydney Medical School and Notre Dame at school, wonderful medical school. You'd know that in America in particular. So I filled up her mother's car for her because her car's down in Sydney, so she'll want a car while she's up here. And that's a car that it's a 3 Series BMW. It takes about $80 to fill it, thereabouts. 95 grade petrol was $122 this week. And the vast majority of that in this country is tax. Now, but you can see even without the big tax imposts in America are very much more modest. But you're a $5 gas now, $6 in some places, coming to you soon. But if you can make enough money, you're safe from it. Money won't buy you happiness, but it will let you survive the bad times, and you'll be much better off than anyone else, I assure you. It's a wonderful time. Equities are going both ways, sometimes quickly. Other markets, massive volatility, wonderful volatility, and you should be getting all of that money. If you're not, get in touch with me. We do it every day. Okay, so while you're rejoicing, have a look at some of these points. The fourth seal, we don't have as many people following the fourth seal as we did. Lots of people got very, very excited about the top that Frank called for 2021, and some of them got disappointed when it didn't happen exactly at the time he called it. Well, forecasting is the hardest game in the world, and honestly, what we got from Frank DB was marvelous, and he should be praised for it. The most important of his calls to me, which he wrote in December 2019, is there would not be a top in equities in 2020. And that was a big call. And, you know, we had that wonderful, wonderful mini crash in 2020, where the market, the S&P, went into a bear market in 23 days and then recovered it all and better. But even in the midst of that, which looked like carnage, Frank was saying there will not be a top in 2020. And that was on its own is a marvelous call. He also said there will be a very, very serious top in mid-2021. And while that top was forming, it still looked like a bull continuation. I was saying to you at every one of our bi-monthly webinars, tops take a long time to form, and big tops take even more. And that's exactly what we saw. The Russell topped in the middle of 2021, exactly as Frank had talked about, but he was talking about the S&P. What's the difference? Not a whole lot. But remember, markets don't mimic, they rhyme. So whatever you're looking at in market action, you can look forward for it to rhyme, and that's what it did. Russell topped right about the middle, bit later in the middle of 2021. The other big markets, the S&P and what have you, the NASDAQ, they topped right at the end of 2021, early 2022. For a call that important, that's pretty fantastic. You'll remember Dr. Bury with the big short in 2017 when he forecast the collapse of MSBs and collateralized obligations and what have you. He was about 8 months early. the worry for his investors is that they were paying margin calls all the time as the market continued to go up. None of you guys ever had to pay a margin call. You simply follow the Danielcode signals and be on the right side of the market. For those of you who decided to jump off and load up with options, that was disappointing for you, but we've never recommended that you do that. In fact, I don't recommend you have anything to do with options. They are systemically mispriced, and if you're an options trader, good luck. How bad can it get? Well, think about this. Biden in the US, Boris in Britain, Macron in France, Xi in China, our new Prime Minister of Australia, we've just had some federal elections here, Anthony Albanese, a reformed, so-called reformed, a socialist, and the Teals. This is the new political group in Australia called the Teals because they are tree huggers. They're a mix between the Greens and the Blues, so they call themselves the Teals and wear teal-coloured shirts. They're all women. Were 12 of them. 11 got elected. Extraordinary circumstances. They took over a swathe of the biggest, richest blue ribbon seats from the Liberal National Party coalition, which, for your knowledge, is not Liberal. It's called the Liberal National Party coalition, but it's actually the Conservative Party. It's nothing like Liberal in the sense that Americans would understand me to mean that word. Add to that list Christine Lagarde, an ex-French politician, president of the European Central Bank. Well, those of you who understand the world will know that, in fact, there's a European Central Bank in name only. It's a complete fake. And we'll talk more about that as we go. So, here we are. Markets rhyme. They don't mimic. I'm talking about Frank's achievements. Here's the Russell, which made its top on a 74-day cycle. Those of you who understand the Danielcode will know that 74 days is one of our prime time cycles in the Danielcode lexicon. This is a 6-day chart. 74 days from the high before the March 2020 mini crash gave you the high exactly. Pretty wonderful. Didn't happen in the other indices. They came later. But here you have at least one of the markets spot on time, and the rest came later. This is the S&P. And this is very important for you to see this chart. This is actually the index. And you'll see that big correction in February 2021. That's that flash crash market that put the S&P technically in a bear market down over 20%. And it all happened in 24 days. The shortest, and it lasted for about 5, the shortest bear market in history. But that's a very important mark on the chart. And the market knows that number. Why do I say that? Well, have a look. Those of you who've been with us for a long time will know that all markets are controlled by the Danielcode. Today looked like a big unexpected down move to you. Look where it went to. These are the Danielcode retracements, and there are 2 sets of them. The set that's inset that's closer to the actual market bars, that's a retracement of the minor swing, which I've shown you there with the the pinky looking coloring. The ones to the right of that, they're the retracements of what is at the moment the major swing. And that today, which looked like a dramatic little flash crash down, look where it stopped. Almost exactly at those numbers. 36.49 and 36.24. This is the index. Where did it finish? Just about there. Interesting, isn't it? And what is going to happen going forward? Honestly, this correction is just warming up. It hasn't even really started yet. There is much, much more to come. The most obvious thing to come is the minor cycle low, which is below 32.60. It's a few points below that. That is certain to be tested. as much as certain means anything in this business, where, as I say, nothing is certain. It's all about probabilities. But some of these probabilities can get very, very exact. Look at this chart here. This is a 6-day chart. Each bar on this chart is 6 days. And we're talking about a reduction or a retracement of a swing that happened between January 2022 and very early March 2021. Look at the precision with which it's ticking it off. The number above the minor retracement, 381289, that was support for the recent rally. What happened on the way down? We got one bar up day before yesterday. Yesterday, we got a little mini panic flash crash down. If you read the burbs from New York, 600, 700, 800 points in the Dow, whatever it was, it's a big deal. This is pandemonium. No, it's not. This is the market doing what the Danielcode always says it will do. It's tracking off its Danielcode numbers. And if you don't know those numbers, you're missing a huge, huge advantage. Look at that. Absolutely specific. Okay, so it appears that we may have an audio problem, folks. If you've lost audio for a few minutes there, don't worry about it. We record all of these webinars, and it'll be posted at the Danielcode website probably tomorrow. Let's move on. There's the S&P. What's going to happen? The absolute minimum is a retracement of the major retracement right now, which is down at 3260. And that should be support. And just below there is the lows of the minor swing, which you've got on there. That is a tempting target for this market to attack, which it will. So look at the stupidity that's coming out. OMG, lost audio again. Thought I had suddenly gone deaf due to COVID. Sorry about that, Rob. We have this wonderful new thing called the NBN in this country, which is the National Broadcasting Network. Some idiotic politician many years ago decided that although we had really quite good enough internet at the time, let's have a major project and sink 42 billion into creating a national broadcasting network, a new internet provider. Once they'd done that, they gave you a kind letter saying, you can't exercise your freedom of choice and use anyone you like. You're going to be on NBN. Yes, there are different resellers, but basically everyone's on the same thing, the NBN, and it's the same buggy internet that all of us have known about for a long time. So let's revert to talking about what's ahead of us. And I thought the funniest comment I've seen this week, amongst many funny comments, is we are designing a tool. Outside America, there's considerable consternation in Europe about interest rates because all of these countries in the Eurozone issue their own securities, that is, bonds. And Norbert, try Elon Musk Starlink. I have it since 6 weeks and love it. Well done, mate. I know you've had endless problems with your internet. Yeah. That's free enterprise, isn't it? Yeah. Anyway, what's happening in Europe is that all of these countries, and they are individual countries, it's really a political union. It's not a proper fiscal union. And they're all issuing their own bonds for fundraising, as they do. And there's considerable concern because the interest rates in the poorer countries and the countries that are in financial hardship, Italy, Greece in particular, their interest rates have been moving at a much higher rate than the core countries. The core countries are Germany, France, all those northern Scandinavian countries. They're pretty solid. And the ECB, the so-called European Central Bank, which is a fiction, it's simply a pooled fund of money controlled ostensibly by the directors of the ECB, but in reality it's controlled by the German Bundesbank, who have the money. It's their money. The vast majority of it. Basically, as I say, it's the German Bundesbank. The Deutsche Bundesbank literally means German Federal Bank. It's a central bank of Germany, but it's also the dominant partner in the ECB because it's got the money. And France also is an important player in the ECB as a founder of the Eurozone and recipient of the farm money. Those of you who are not involved in the ECB wouldn't know that it's a giant patsy party for, amongst others, France, Italy, to an extent, and the allocations of European money to France to maintain its farmers in the state they live in and love to live in, naturally, I'll tell you more about it later, is absolutely extraordinary. I mean, there's a rude expression about doing something down the drain. It begins with a P. And boy, money to France for farming has got to be the most scandalous and ridiculous use of money. So I love what the ECB said when all of a sudden Italy's interest rates were blowing out. There's a lot of problems with Italy. They're starting to use the word Italexit, in other words, like Brexit, it's a copy, that Italy might leave the Eurozone. Greece is always on the edge of leaving the Eurozone. And what was the European Bank going to do to equalize the bond rates between the various countries? Because interest rates are hitting harder in the weaker countries, naturally. That's Spain, not so much Spain, Portugal to an extent, Greece really, and Italy. And they expect the ECB to make that uniform. So what was Madame Lagarde's quote on that? Front page news, because that part of the world actually takes what's happening in the ECB seriously. And her announcement was that we are designing a tool. They're all technocrats in Europe now, and everything's got to be in technocrat language. Nothing can't be solved without a tool. But they don't have a tool to control inflation. They don't have a tool to equalize the different stresses in the bonds of the various countries. But Madame Lagarde, she said, we are designing a tool. And Europe got very excited about that. I'll tell you how well that'll go, about as well as everything else the ECB's done in the last 10 years. This is what happened today. And this is actually the flip side of the problem. The dark-coloured line is interest rates on German bonds, Bunds, and the lighter-coloured line at the bottom are interest rates on Italian bonds. And what the Euro Central Bank did today is they frantically bid up the price to suppress the yield of the Italian bonds, but let the Germans' bond rate go. It doesn't mean anything. This chart, they're not equal value. They just put one on top of the other to show the impact. Here's the ECB doing exactly the opposite of what it said it was trying to do. So they don't have the tool, folks, but they are designing the tool. Don't hold your breath for that one. So this is a picture of Barambula Homestead as it was. And this is a very historic, wonderful, beautiful old place. That was the first major house built across the Blue Mountains. Those in Australia will know what I'm talking about. The Blue Mountains is a spine, it's a huge mountain ridge running up the east coast of Australia, which in the early days was a very, very substantial barrier to exploration and development. And of course, once I think Blackstone and Lawson had found the way through the Blue Mountains, all that country up there is the absolute best farming and grazing country you could possibly imagine. And this place there, you're seeing it in its old, dilapidated state when I bought it. And that's what's called Barambula Homestead near Wagga, near Tarcutta. And it was the first really important house built in that part of the world the other side west of the Great Divide, or the Australian Great Dividing Range. And it was designed and built by the Cox brothers, very famous early architects in Australia. Elizabeth Bay House, for those of you who know what I'm talking about, was designed by the Cox brothers. So this was a absolutely standout and at one time historic homestead. It had 100,000 acres was the grant of land with it. Over the years, that's been whittled down and whittled down and whittled down. When I bought it, it was a pretty dilapidated house, looking pretty much, well, about what you see there, I guess. But the dreadful shame of it had been totally and utterly let go by the previous owners. So bad. This house, let me tell you, has a formal ballroom built out of teak, and the hole underneath it, because we had to pull the place apart to fix everything, there are 16 giant springs that support the ballroom floor. In other words, it's a sprung ballroom floor, which is the perfect traditional way of building a proper ballroom floor. So it can move slightly and compensate for what's happening with the dancers as they move around. Absolutely precious, isn't it? Well, when I got it, the previous owners had been using that for lambing their sheep in. And the main bedroom, which is the window you see on the left-hand side of that photo, that was the main bedroom. That was full of hay, as was much of the rest of the house. And the kitchen at the back, which you can see it's still standing there, the back half of it wasn't. It was all gone. I had to rebuild all that. It had, when I bought it, only had 100 acres with it. I bought another 800 acres to make it a proper working property. We had cattle there and some sheep. Since I've sold it, it's gone back to being only 100 acres. But there's an interesting story to this. Part of it is that my daughter, Bodie, was up at Wagga last weekend for a function or other. It's now a vineyard, a very, very good vineyard. They've done terribly well. The property now looks immaculate again, hopefully as good or better than when I owned it. And they produce wonderful wine. And Bodie brought at home a bottle of that wine, and it's got a picture of a horse on it because a winner of the Melbourne Cup, the most important horse race in Australia, was bred on this property. It's got a wonderful, long and storied history. But why I'm showing it to you, and I hope you've enjoyed the anecdotes, is to tell you about the ridiculous, ludicrous situation of farming in France. Now, the theory is that France has a lifestyle which involves a whole lot of farming and wonderful farming. They grow the world's best, all sorts of things, wines, beef is great, cheese, of course, the world's leading producers of very, very fine cheeses, and everything else. But what you wouldn't know, and I didn't know, the detail of it, I know that the Brits always complained that they paid so much money towards the farming budget, propping up French farmers who they always said were terribly inefficient. Now, when I went to sell this property, a lady rang up from Sydney, said, I'd like to come and look at the place. I said, well, that'll be fine. And she rolled up in a Saab, a very dashing looking lady too, very elegant, as you would expect. And in the conversation, I said to her, what business you in? Oh, she said, we're farmers in France. I said, oh, what do you do? Cattle, sheep? No, she said, no, we grow hay. Well, we have hay growers in this country as well. I know what growing hay is about. I used to grow 25 acres of lucerne hay on Barambula down the bottom there near the Tarcutta River, all irrigated, wonderful stuff. Good enough you'd want to eat it if you looked at it. So I said, what do we do with the hay production? Only that? No cattle? No, just grow hay. I said, oh, how big's your place? She said, 25 acres. I said, excuse me, I fell over laughing. I didn't think I'd heard it properly. 25 acres is like a handkerchief. It's a bit bigger, but not a lot. It's a small paddock. You might grow a bit of lucerne in it for your thoroughbreds. That's about all. I mean, you need hundreds and hundreds, indeed thousands of acres to be a commercial hay grower. But in France, the subsidies from the EU are so big that you can not only survive, you can drive a brand new Saab if you've got 25 acres growing hay in France. I mean, it just sounds totally and utterly ridiculous, and it is ridiculous. And that's what goes on today. So that's to give you a little bit of enlightenment into farming in France. Have a look at this. No baby formula in the States. Again, in the US in 2022. Is it possible? 3 companies produce almost all the baby formula in America. One of them has been shut down by the regulator. Recently, they got after plenty of news about it and protest. One of them got permission to open again. What's happened? They got flooded. So they're going to be delayed for a few more weeks. In the meantime, you can't get baby formula in America. The government is flying in baby formula for the babies, the future citizens of America haven't got enough baby formula to keep them going. I mean, if you think about that for a moment, I have 2 children. One was a wonderful breastfeeder. In fact, if she hadn't been weaned, she'd still be on it today. But my son, he wouldn't breastfeed at all. He had to be bottle fed. And I know how important baby formula is to parents everywhere. For the United States of America to not be able to produce enough baby formula for its future citizens, for its babies, for the children of America, it is scandalous. There seem to be plenty of things in America that folks can protest about, but this one, honestly, it's unbelievable, isn't it? You think there are problems in America? There are many problems, and they're not just in America. We've all got them, including this country. Okay, and talking about that, are you enjoying your $5 gas? Soon to be $6 gas in America? Chevron's come out today and said that, here's the Biden administration claiming their policies are helping make people, well, they're claiming they make people richer and the economy is the best it's ever been. That's the statement. Gig, they want to kill them before they're born. Why would you want to feed them? Oh, you're a cynic. My friend from Gig from North Carolina, he's a great man. Danielcode tutorial guy. Wonderful. And a good trader himself. He's been trading a long, long time. Good to have you with us, Gig. Always good to have you with us, my friend. So here we are, $5 gas in America, going to $6 soon. And Chevron's come out today after hearing more of this rubbish from Biden and simply said, the messages you've been giving us is that you are imposing obstacles to our industry. They say they're spending a fortune about it. They keep planning to boost production, but the regulator, no leases, never know when the leases are coming up to bid on, all sorts of overlying problems, including making more ethanol mandatory. I mean, ethanol comes from corn. It's a food. People need food. You're just going to shove that into petrol, honestly. And what about the XL pipeline from Canada? That seemed a pretty basic one, didn't it? Well, you folks know about all of that and a whole lot more than I do. Immigration, other issues, racial problems, all happening, isn't it? And things are going to get worse, but not for you. You'll be fine, and you'll, my friend Gig, and you will prosper because you know how to trade the Danielcode. This is interesting. Did you miss it? Shock decision, SNB, that's the Swiss National Bank, hiked rates for the first time in 15 years. Warns it may sell billions of stocks, many of which are US dollar stocks. In a decision that came as a shock to the market this morning, the Swiss National Bank raised its policy rate by 50 basic points to 25%. plus 25%, its first rate hike in 15 years, against unanimous consensus of no change. Who's giving you this consensus? Idiots sitting in merchant banks and investment banks in New York. The unanimous consensus was no change, and a dramatic move that sent the franc surging more than 2% against the euro. Okay, think about it. Did you miss it? Why would you miss it? We knew it. We traded it. Here's the chart. This is the Canadian chief forex pair. You could trade this exactly the same in currencies. What did we have right at that high? We had the nice run up, of course we did. We had a lovely run down before it. Straight down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. We had all that run up. We got to the high. 77.92 was the number. The close was just a handful of ticks away from it. TO3 sell signal. 2 days down. TO3 buy signal gave you 1 day up. What happened then? I've been talking about this for the last year. I talked about it specifically at our last webinar. And Greg Palladini was kind enough to ask me a few questions about it. He was seriously interested in it. I don't know if you were. If you weren't, the point I was making is that these TO3 and TO3 plus signals are so powerful that when you get a signal that is elected, there is a reason for it. It means that price and time were squared at the point the signal was generated. It also means, more importantly, and don't try this with any other signal other than a TO3 or a plus signal, it also means that a failure means you're wrong and you should be on the other side of the trade. Well, have a look at this. I'll just bring up the chart for myself so I can tell you the exact days so you know. We had that little push down from the high, which came on June the 8th, the high. That bar closed at 77.91. You see the blue line? 77.92. 1 tick away. That's not even a hair. That's not even half a hair. Down it went, according to the TO3 sell signal. 2 days down, got a TO3 buy signal. Which actually it's incorrectly marked, was a TO3 plus buy signal. 1 day up, and it failed. At the time of that failure, you should have been short 2 ticks below the setup bar from the original, the last buy signal, which was at 76.87. You should have been short there. We got short with the move down on Tuesday. We were short on Tuesday. Now have a look at that and have a think about it. In view of the ranges this market's been doing, that bar on Tuesday is a pretty large bar, and it's a pretty significant bar. And it's significant because A, it got us short from the previous low, and the market knew, the Danielcode at least knew that you should have been short on that day. In other words, this much secret, much hypothesized, much hyped, the Swiss banks raised interest rates. No one thought that was going to happen. Yes, they did. Somebody knew. Somebody always knew. That corrective bar, that's the bar that's got the arrow pointing to it saying, flip me short. The low of that bar was 76.50. Can you see the red line at 76.48? 2 ticks variance. That was a pretty dynamic move down and all the way back. Who pushed it all the way back? Probably the Swiss National Bank. They'd be the last to know what they're doing. And then what happens? Inside bar and bang, straight down. $2,200 today simply for being listening to my webinars, which are free. Okay? And being a subscriber to the Danielcode signal. If you knew nothing else, that's paid for your subscription for the next year or so. Wonderful trade. Not many of you got it. You should have got it. If you didn't get it, let me know, because you don't know how to trade. And that includes almost all those folks sitting in New York who are pontificating about what the market might or might not do. War in Ukraine. economic problems that are going to flow from it. Ukraine supplies almost 10% of the world's grain. In 2019, Ukraine accounted for 16% of the world's corn, 42% of sunflowers, and about 12% of wheat. That's sunflower oil, I should say, 42%, according to UN data. Russia is sending grain from Ukraine overseas. Can you believe this? Russian officials, appointed officials in occupied southern Ukraine said. They claim, which the BBC has not been able to verify, comes as Ukraine officials accuse Russia of stealing about 600,000 tons of its grain and exporting it. Russia denies it's stealing grain. Well, of course they would. They think they own that country. Accessing Ukraine's stockpiled grains become urgent internationally. Millions of tons are exported annually to Africa and the Middle East. It can't be shipped now because Russia's navy is blockading Ukraine's Black Sea ports. Well, the spin is that they're not, that Ukraine's got mines there. Turkey's trying to act as a mediator because it's on both sides of not only this fence, but any fence pretty much. And they're hoping to come to some arrangement. Don't hold your breath for that, folks. That's a pretty substantial part of the world's grain supplies. Farmers can't be out there planting and looking after their crops and harvesting their crops if they're fighting a war. What happens in winter? What happens when people are starving because this food hasn't been replaced and the world can't replace it? 10% may not sound a lot to you, but I can tell you 10% of the world's grain is an awful lot of the world's grain, and it can't be picked up from anywhere else. Certainly not in the short term. War, famine. Australia, we have a new Labor government. Basically, they're a bunch of reform socialists, of one shade or another. Anthony Albanese is our new Prime Minister. He claimed he was a financial advisor to the Hawke government, which is claimed to be a very successful Labor government in Australia some decades ago. Well, in fact, he wasn't a financial advisor. He was a very junior operator in the office of Tom Uren, a minister under the Hawke government. Those of you who've got long enough memories will remember Tom Uren was a communist, a self-professed communist, became a Hawke government minister. So here's Albanese, who has gone through many, many years of waiting to be Prime Minister, waiting to lead the Labor Party. Much loved by the media, gets a really easy run. And we'll see in the next few years how much he is a reformed socialist or whether he's still a socialist underneath it. One of the interesting things that happened in this election is that we had 11 Teals. And the Teals are a bunch of women, all of them. There were 12 of them. 11 actually got elected. They call themselves Teals because they think they're somewhere between blue, which is the colour of the Liberal Party in Australia, which is not Liberal, it's the Conservative Party, and the Greens, who are the tree huggers, as you probably know. And they were all sponsored by a very wealthy young man called Simon Holmes à Court, whose claim to fame is that he was the son of Robert Holmes à Court, who was a very, very successful businessman, became one of the wealthiest men in Australia, died early and left the money to the family, including the son, Simon. And Simon's very into climate change and the worries about it. As we all are. You don't need to be a rock star and have a huge brain to say we should be looking after the earth a whole lot better than we are. But the reality is, the message of the Teals is we got to cut out all fossil fuels. Well, understand that. Understand also that we've been working for many, many years on renewables, on wind. All the wind towers in Australia, and there are many of them, are built in China, and they're very, very expensive. And the sun, which we have plenty of, but it only makes power when A, the wind is blowing, which it doesn't do all the time, and B, the sun is shining, which it doesn't do all the time. But this crowd got themselves elected. They're all ladies. One or two of them have some recommendation. They were previously journalists. Apart from that, I don't think they have any recommendation at all. In fact, one of them got to the extent of let mummy give you an endorsement. She's the daughter of an Australian fashion designer, as if that's important. But she got to the stage of asking the headmistress of her old school, Ascombe in Edgecliff, Sydney's eastern suburbs, to endorse her and tell the world that she'd been the head girl at the school. And she was an outstanding student at Ascombe all those years ago. She's no chicken. And people thought that was exciting. People thought that was interesting. I think it's totally and utterly ridiculous. And they're a bunch of climate fanatics. We've got to get rid of fossil fuels. You get rid of fossil fuels. I want to make sure there's plenty of oil to run the car. And I'm not buying an electric car, not in the foreseeable future. And I want to make sure there's plenty of gas to run the heaters and everything else as well. Germany and other European countries, folks, are about to show the world what happens when fantasy replaces reality. Winter is coming. Fuel prices are already through the roof. How do you think Europe's going to manage without Russia's oil and without Russia's gas? And it's great to say we're cutting off from Russian oil and gas. Russia's making more money on its oil and gas today than it's ever made. What's Europe going to do? They've shut down all their refining. They've shut down more than half their nuclear plants. Wind's not going to make it happen, nor's the sunshine. It'll work when it works, but doesn't work all the time. And battery technology is simply not there to store it. Food shortages now. Can you believe it? Think of this in Australia. This is an interesting one for Mr. Albanese to grapple with. None of his predecessors, incidentally, have grappled with it. This is not a kick at Labor. This is a kick at all governments. Australia's strategic fuel reserve is not even in Australia. It's over 9,000 miles away. Where do you think it is? Henry Hub in the US, in those big caves. What happens if Australia is in a shooting or nearly shooting situation? You think the tankers are going to all be able to get here from America? How long does that take? How many of them are available? When's it going to happen? Absolute stupidity of our rulers is really beyond belief. And China, the tentacles are ever growing. Solomon Islands is only less than 2,000 miles from Australia. China has signed a deal with the Solomon Islands to provide their security and everything else. You can read that yourself. Solomon Islands is only 1,050 miles, 1,080 miles actually, from north point of Queensland, northern state in Australia. China is there. They're building a port. They're providing their security and everything else. Have a look at some of the trading that's been going on, folks. This is the Euro USD. Look at that DC target recognition of the black line at 103.981. Pretty much perfect, wasn't it? Just amazing. This is the dollar yen. You think this was accurate? That high was within a couple of ticks of the blue line. Where did it go to? Well, these charts before it happened. The charts were done last weekend. There's your retracement, exactly where it went to, 131.48. US dollar index. Very interesting. I'm going to take a moment. I've got a few more charts, so don't rush away. I've talked a lot today, and I've got another 4 or 5 minutes to go, folks, which I'll try and rush through, but all of this is important. Everything at the Danielcode is important. This is the dollar yen. This is actually the US dollar index. Here we are. That high at the outside bar that gave you the key reversal bar, right at the high, yesterday, that was Wednesday, that high was 105.565. Where's that Danielcode blue line? 105.550, 15 ticks away. And Gig, you can tell your friend that's been on there for weeks and weeks, like all of this stuff. Okay, have a look at this. S&P E-mini flipped me. I talked about it last week. We had a blue line and TO3 buy into Wednesday, which was elected. The failure point is 2 ticks below the low of the setup bar. When that was hit, that was a flip me signal to get short. which is exactly what we did, and I hope you did too. Where did that cut in? The low of the setup bar was 3807.50, so the flip me signal was 3807.0 or 3807.25 if you wished. Where did it go to today? Straight down. Nice trade, nothing exciting about it, it's all good money. It closed at 36.80. Where's the blue line? 36.78. Where was the low? 36.42. Where's the blue line underneath that? 36.41. 2 ticks variance, folks. You think this is all happening due to some sort of magic in the market? It's happening because the Danielcode defines what will happen. Have a look at this. Not many of you trade the DAX, but for those that you do, lovely, wasn't it? Big hit today, lots of money. There we are, same thing. It had the blue line signal up. Today, flip me signal, returned about $3,000, $2,500 per one contract for nothing, for simply knowing what I talked to you about 2 weeks ago. Here's copper. We're long in the way up. Here's your TO3 plus sell signal, right up at that high at 455.15. Where was that high that created that signal? Well, that came with the big expansion up bar on Thursday, June the 2nd. Where was the close of that day, incidentally? 455.25. Where was the Danielcode red line? 455.15. Amazing, isn't it? Straight down, $8,500 per one contract into today's close. And this is the Russell. Nice trade down for 6,300. One day up on the TO3, and it might have been a blue line trade as well. And the flip me signal got you short below that existing low, $2,100 today. And this, to give you thinking a bit more to work on, UST bonds, new target. I've been showing you this UST bonds chart. I've been showing it to some people since about 2002, but you've been seeing it at least since 2008. And it just keeps working and working and working. Some months ago, I told you the breakdown to the third standard deviation from the mean was going to come in at about 136 or thereabouts, and it did. Then we've had a bit of a rally since then. Now what I've done, I've put on the fourth standard deviation from the mean. It's down at 125 or thereabouts, correct, 10 in this case, that's only an estimate. And we've got a time cycle starting in, these are 24-day bars, and it's about 2-3 months from now. That's your next target to think about. It's doing a rally now. We'll see what happens. But what will happen is basically what the markets will tell you. So plenty of bad news everywhere, but not if you're a Danielcode trader. You're making more money than you ever thought possible. If you're not, let me know. You're going to need lots of money to survive what's coming at you, folks. If you have enough money, it won't be a problem for you. Life will be a doddle, and there'll be lots of cheap assets to buy before this is all over. So if you want to learn to be a super trader, join the elite, email me, jneedham@thedanielcode.com. jneedham@thedanielcode.com. Shoot me an email. I'll be happy to send you some material and to discuss the Danielcode tutorial with you. Remember, the business of trading is making money. That's what we're all about. It sounds a bit graphic, but that's what it is. And remember that every trade has someone on the other side. Almost all of them are Muppets, but some of them are people like me. And if you're going to be on the other side of a trade with me or someone like me who knows what I know, you want to make sure that you've learned everything there is to know about the Danielcode. If you haven't already, folks, please take advantage of the free trials. Go to www.thedanielcode.com, start your free trial. Any issues about activating that free trial, contact Terry at support@thedanielcode.com. He will be happy to assist you. And finally, folks, and thank you for being with us for all this time. I'm about 6 minutes over time. do be aware that trading futures and Forex, if you don't know what you're doing, is incredibly risky, and you can lose your money very, very quickly. Equally, once you know how to trade the Danielcode, you can make an awful lot of money very, very quickly. So take my advice seriously. I've been doing this for a long time. I know how easy it is to lose money trading. Don't risk real money. Don't start trading until you are completely confident that you know what you're doing. If you don't, we're here to help you. And the reality is that most of you don't. But people think that they know a bit about trading from the internet. You don't. It's mostly smoke and mirrors. Jeff, thank you, my friend. Very good. He enjoyed that. That's grand. Jeff's been with us for a long time. So that's me for today, folks. I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you got all those trades I've shown you. I hope your pockets are bulging with money all the time, every day. If they're not, they should be. There's so much happening in these markets, terrific volatility, lots of good stuff happening. You should be getting all of it. Okay, Gig, there you are. Great charts. You don't make them up, of course. It says it all. Thank you, my friend. That was great. Brilliant. Thank you. Oh, that's from my daughter. Wonderful. I'm glad she occasionally sees what her father does for a living. Okay, take care, my friends. It was wonderful having you with us today, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next webinar, which will be in a fortnight, which is 2 weeks. In the meantime, any questions, shoot me an email. Be happy to talk to you about trading, teach you about trading, include anything that you're particularly interested in our next webinar coming up. All the best for now. Enjoy your weekend and count your money. Bye-bye.